This video will walk through how to use the annual budget from Budget Babe templates. I'll be showing this tutorial on the Excel version, but the Google Sheets version works almost exactly the same way, and I will call out where there are small differences in Google Sheets. The annual budget has 17 tabs: the Instructions tab, a Setup tab, an Annual Summary, a Transactions log, the Smart Calendar, and then 12 monthly tabs. We'll go through each of these tabs during this tutorial. We'll go back to the Instructions tab, and the tab here will link you to step-by-step instructions for setting up and using your budget. We'll cover all of the information in this tab within this video. If you are using the Excel version of this template, and your version of Excel does not have the two font types called Laura and Nunito, you'll want to install those for the file to work as designed. Those are available by clicking on the embedded files in the Instructions tab. All you need to do is double-click on one of the font files. You would click Open, and then you'd click Install right here on the top. I'm going to X out of this since I have already installed these fonts. Now, one note, you will want to close and reopen Excel after you have installed the font files for the fonts to show up appropriately within Excel. And if you are using the Google Sheets version, you will have access to those font types automatically. So first, we're going to go to the Setup tab to set up our budget. One thing that you'll notice right away is that you're only going to be able to click within certain cells in the file. This makes sure that any changes that you make won't impact any of the automatic calculations set up throughout the file. In the Google Sheets version, you will receive a warning pop-up if you attempt to modify a cell that should not be changed. In both versions, any cell that you should not touch will be shaded or colored. The first step on the Setup tab is to select your currency right here. The default is the dollar, but let's say you're in Europe. All you need to do is change the symbol in this box here to the euro, and that change would carry through the template. I am based in the US, so I'm going to keep this as the dollar for now. Next, we're going to set up our budget subcategories. This is really where you can make the budget personal and custom to you. You can add up to 10 income subcategories, up to 15 savings subcategories, and then up to 30 bills, expenses, and debt subcategories. With your purchase, you received a PDF file that gives ideas on what subcategories may fall under each category. The instructions also give examples of the most common subcategories, but that PDF reference guide gives a much more comprehensive list, so I definitely recommend checking that out as you set up your subcategories. The PDF that came with your purchase can also be accessed via that first Instructions tab. For this demonstration, I'm going to keep the subcategories pretty simple. So for income, for this example, I've got 3 income sources. I'm going to do paycheck, side hustle, and selling stuff or resale. Now, as a reminder, this budget works for any pay frequency. I'll be demonstrating a bi-weekly pay frequency during this tutorial, but if you receive any sort of paycheck on any sort of cadence, you only need one subcategory for that, and you can just call it paycheck. Next, we'll move on to savings. Now, savings can include both savings and sinking funds. Sinking funds are a savings line item that you contribute to monthly for a future big expense. So for this example, I'm going to do an emergency fund. I'm going to do a savings for a home, which would be a sinking fund. I'm going to do a sinking fund for a vacation, and then I'm just going to have a retirement savings contribution every month as well. Next, we'll move on to bills. And bills are fixed costs that happen every month, and many times are going to be the same amount every month. So for this example, I'll have several bills. The first is a mortgage. Second is my cell phone bill. Next is utilities. Next is my internet bill. Now, one note about utilities can vary month to month, but for me, my utilities are direct debited from my checking account, and so because of that, I consider utilities a bill. If you wanted to, you could put utilities under expenses since it's a more variable cost. It's totally your call. Next, we are going to move on to expenses. So expenses are costs that may or may not happen every month, and the amounts will typically vary month to month. Oftentimes, expenses are called variable expenses for this reason. In my example, I'm going to do groceries, food delivery, entertainment, daycare, and kids miscellaneous. Now, a tip about expenses, you can make these as specific or as general as you want. Let's say you have a dog. You could have one expense subcategory for everything related to your dog, or you could break that out into specific dog expenses like doggy daycare, dog food, vet bills, etc. For me here, I decided for my kids that I just wanted one category that was all about my kids' miscellaneous items, but again, I could have chosen this to break this out into kids' clothing, kids' school expenses, whatever I wanted to do. Next is debt, and this is typically consists of loans and credit cards. So for this example, what I'm going to do is student loan, car loan, and credit card. Now, a note about credit card under debt. Typically, when we're talking about credit cards within the debt category, we're talking about credit cards where you are carrying a balance that you want to pay off over time. If you use a credit card for your variable expenses month over month, but you're paying that credit card completely off every month, you wouldn't need to list that under debt. The last step on our setup tab is to enter our bill and debt due dates. So what I'm going to do is scroll down here to our bill and debt due dates section. Now you'll see that your bills and debt subcategories have automatically populated in this list. So you can see my 4 bills here, and then if I scroll down, you can see my 3 debts again have automatically populated within the list. To enter the due dates, you're going to type the day of the month that the bill or debt is due. If your bill is due on the same day every month, all you need to do is type the day into the January cell and it will carry over to the other months. If your bill is due different days of the month, you can just type a new date in that corresponding cell. So for example here, I'm going to start with my mortgage, and I'm going to say that my mortgage is due on the 5th of every month. Once I type in a 5, you can see that 5 has carried through to every single month. My cell phone, I'm going to say is due on the 1st of the month. My utilities are on the 10th of the month. And then my internet is due on the 12th of the month. And you can see again those carried over. If for some reason I know in March my utilities are due on the 12th of the month, not the 10th, I can just go ahead and pop in a 12 right there in March in that cell. Next, I'm going to go down to debt and again populate my due dates. So let's say my student loan's due on the 1st, my car loan is due on the 15th, and then my credit card is due on the 25th. And then again, that automatically populates over into those cells. All right, we're going to skip the annual summary tab for now because the annual summary tab pulls in actuals. And so in order to show you how to use this tab, we're going to need to actually log some actuals and then we can come back and show you how to use it. I'm also going to skip the transactions tab because again, this is used to log actuals. So we'll come back to this. And then the smart calendar, again, we'll jump over this for now, but we'll come back and show you in a moment. So next, I'm going to go over to the January tab. Now, if you've purchased this template at any other point in the year, you would just start with whatever monthly tab that you want to start budgeting. I'm going to show January for this example, but you don't need to use all of the tabs for this template to work. Within the January tab, all we need to do is enter our planned budget for the subcategories for that month. This is essentially what you think you're going to spend in each subcategory. Now, if you've never planned a budget before, I'd recommend looking at your most recent 3 months of income and spending and using those averages as a starting point. You will want to enter your planned amount at the start of each month that you're budgeting. This is the only step that you're going to need to complete every single month. So again, I'm going to act as if I'm starting in January, and I will start by entering my planned amounts for January. So for my income, I am anticipating that I'm going to get $5,000 for the entire month for my paycheck, that I'm going to get $500 from my side hustle, and I'm going to get $150 from selling stuff. Now again, a note about pay frequency. What I am entering here for $5,000 is the total amount from all the paychecks that I anticipate that I will receive through January. So because I anticipate that I'm going to receive 2 paychecks, those 2 paychecks are $2,500 a piece. I'm going to enter in my total planned income from paychecks as $5,000 for the month of January. Next, I'm going to scroll down. And I'm going to go ahead and enter my savings planned amounts. So for my emergency fund, I want to save $500 this month. Towards my home, I want to save another $500. Towards my vacation, I'd like to save $50. And then for my retirement account, I'll save $200. Next, I'm going to go input my planned amounts for my bills. So my mortgage is $1,500. My cell phone is $50. My utilities, I'm planning to be $100. And then my internet, I'm planning to be $50. Next, my planned amount for expenses. My groceries are going to be $400. My food delivery is going to be $100. Entertainment's $100. Daycare is $1,000. And for kids miscellaneous, I'm budgeting $200. And last, for debt, I'm going to be paying $300 towards my student loan, $300 towards my car, and $200 towards my credit card. Now, one note about planned amounts for your debt. For your loans, you're going to want to go ahead and play whatever monthly payment amount you agree to at the start of the loan. And for your credit card, you're going to want to pay at least as much as you need to pay towards the minimum payment in order for your account to be in good standing. Now, if you have a question on how much you should be putting towards your debt, we have a template called Debt Snowball, which will help you pay off your debts in order from the smallest debt to the largest debt. That template, used in combination with an annual budget or monthly budget, can help you understand how to allocate any leftover money you have to put towards debt and how much to allocate towards each item. Okay, so those are my planned amounts for January. Now, if we look into the overview table right here at the top, you can see that my amount left to plan is $100. That means that my saving amount and my spending budget has added up to $100 less than my total planned income. Now, if you wanted this to add up to zero, you could go ahead and allocate an additional $100 towards another bucket. So instead of groceries being $400, if I put $500 in that amount, now my amount left to budget is zero. If you plan to zero, that is what's called a zero-based budget. If you prefer to leave yourself a buffer, you can plan so there's a balance left over after you enter your planned amounts. That's what my budget looked like before when I had $100 left. If you do end up with a balance, you can always roll it over to the next month and account for that as an income line item. So you'll see here that your insight graphs have started to populate with your planned amounts. These will continue to fill in as we move into actuals. So at this point, your month is set up and ready for you to begin logging actuals. Now next, I'm going to demonstrate how you'd actually begin logging actuals. The transactions you record here are going to flow to the rest of the budget template. So I'm going to go over to the transactions log, and I'm going to input several demo transactions now. Again, I'm going to pretend like I've started my budget in January on January 1st, but you can start wherever you'd like. So again, this monthly budget is going to work for any pay frequency. You'll see here I'm going to input a paycheck. If I was a biweekly paid employee, I would just note that in the weeks in my notes section. You'll log all of your paychecks and they will roll up under the paychecks subcategory. So here I'm going to say that on January 1st, I received my first paycheck for $2,500. I'm going to select my income subcategory. I'm going to select my paycheck subcategory. And then I'm just going to say that this is my first paycheck of the month. Next, I'm going to say on the first, I also contributed towards my emergency fund. $500, that was a savings towards my emergency fund. Next, we're going to say on the first that my cell phone was due, so I went ahead and paid that bill. That is my bill. My cell phone. We're going to say on January 2nd that I went ahead and did a grocery run for my expenses. I'm going to log that under groceries. And then last, we'll say that on the second, I also went ahead and paid my student loan bill for $300. That was under debt and student loan. Okay, now one note, when you log actuals, the template will load that transaction into the month that you date it automatically. The only exception here is if you select a different month in this apply to column. So you'd use this feature when you wanted a transaction to apply to the previous or next month. So for example, if you were receiving a paycheck on January 21st, you likely would want that paycheck to apply to February instead of January. In that case, you would go ahead and log the paycheck just like this. I will demonstrate it. $131.23, $2,500, income, and paycheck. But because I want that to apply to February to cover my February expenses, I'm going to select next month. When I do that, I will be able to see that income within my February tab, but it won't show up in my January tab. Now, when we go ahead and go back to our January tab, you can see here that your actuals have started to populate and the insight graphs have also started to update. You can see your actuals versus your planned, how much you have left to spend, which is just based on how much income you've had come in so far, less the amount that you've spent so far, and then a breakdown of your spending across subcategories. Now, one note on expenses, the budget dashboard automatically adds and calculates if you have multiple transactions in a subcategory. So for example, down here you can see that my $100 grocery expense that I logged in my transactions has logged in my actuals, and I've spent 20% of my planned amount for groceries. If I go back into the transactions log tab, and let's just say on January 8th, I had another grocery run that I needed to complete, and it was for another $100. I will go ahead and select expenses and select groceries again. When I go back to January, if you go back to the dashboard, you can see my grocery total now shows $200, which was the additive total of spent on my 2 grocery trips. And also showing that I've now spent 40% of my planned budget for groceries for the month. At the end of the month, you can use that percent plan column to adjust your budget for future months. So let's say, for example, I'm going to go back to the transactions tab and I'm going to make one more big grocery trip this month. Let's say it was on the 15th. And here I spent $350, expenses, and again on groceries. Now when I go back to January, you can see that I've spent over my planned amount for the month. So it's at 110% of your plan. If this happens in any category where you're spending more than 100% of your plan, you may want to adjust your planned budget in the future months to account for those higher grocery costs. So for example, what this means is when I enter my planned amounts for February, I might want to plan to $550 or $600 for groceries, knowing that I went over in January. So that covers most of the features within your monthly tabs. Now again, remember in our transactions tab, we logged a paycheck in January for February. You can see that that paycheck has now showed up within my February actuals because I logged it in January and selected it to apply to the next month. When it was time to come to February, all I would need to do is again come in and enter my planned amounts for February, and I'd be ready to go logging actuals within my actual transactions within the transaction log for February, and you'd continued on each month through your budget. Now I'm going to show you the features of the Smart Calendar. Most features of the Smart Calendar are automatic and pull from the template. You'll need to tell the calendar what month you're budgeting by selecting the month here. So you can see I'm already on January of 2023. All of the bills and debt subcategories are automatically going to flow into the Smart Calendar and be reflected both on this bills and debts list and on the calendar. So the bills and debts list is going to be organized by the due date and includes an option for you to mark each bill and debt as paid by selecting the check symbol. So all you would need to do is select a little check once you've paid your cell phone, and then remember in my transaction log, I also paid my student loan, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that as paid. Under the calendar, if you scroll down, you have the option of adding extra bills or debts. This area is best used for unexpected bills or debts that are coming due within the month after you've already set up your budget. A common example of this is receiving a medical bill. You just simply add the name and day that that bill is due, and then you're not going to add the full date, just the day of the month. and this will automatically get added to your bills and debts calendar and list in order of due date. So you can see here there's an extra example loaded, and it says that the date is due on the 12th. That extra example is automatically loading within your bills and debts list and then automatically on your smart calendar. Under the calendar, you also have the option to add up to 5 paydays if you want them reflected on the calendar. You'd simply just enter the full dates of your paydays for the month and they'll automatically appear on the calendar. Now, one note, while your calendar and bills and debts list will automatically update when you switch months, these extra bills and extra paychecks lists will need to be manually cleared and updated for them to reflect for the new month. So again, if you go ahead and just to show you, once I select February, the entire calendar will switch over to February and show those bills and debts. I'm going to go back to January here. Okay, now we can go back and visit and show you how to use the annual summary tab of the dashboard. So the annual dashboard has 2 key areas. The top charts here are going to show you monthly trends as you populate actuals. And then if you scroll down, you'll be able to see your top 10 subcategories across each category. The annual dashboard is fully automated, so there's nothing you'll need to input in any cell within this tab. It's automatically just going to update to show you those insights throughout the year. Now, if you have any questions on this annual budget template, you can reach out to us. You can also visit our website, www.budgetbabetemplates.com, and sign up to get free resources, news on new product launches, and discount codes. Thanks so much for your purchase, and happy budgeting.